To understand how important critical race theory is to the Marxist Democrat Party, you only need to look at the story playing out in South Lake School District, Carroll ISD, my district, in the heart of conservative Texas, just outside of Dallas. It's not the place you would imagine a debate about CRT would necessarily occur, but that's exactly what's happening. Critical race theory, aka institutionalized Marxist racism, is the ideology that teaches people to view America as systemically racist, a racist country where every law, every policy, every institution was created to oppress people of color. It's a lie, obviously, but it's essential that progressives teach your children this philosophy. Why? Because leftists must convince your child that the American system is evil and unsalvageable because they intend to radically change it and move the country towards socialism and communism. And CRT is the worldview that is critical to achieving this goal. And at the center of CRT is the belief that equality must be destroyed for equity. Equity is obtained through discrimination. So in order to obtain the absolute same outcomes for everyone, some people must be treated unfairly. Equality is an enemy of CRT. It's anti-equity. This is where you get the whole white privilege phrase, among other things. And what's more, CRT proponents argue that equality is impossible because the country wasn't created with equality in mind. And as of such, as we said, every single system and measure is flawed. Their solution is to destroy the unfair and inequitable republic in favor of a system that apportions equal amounts of equity, no matter what sort of discrimination had to occur to facilitate it. CRT has conquered nearly every institution in America already. This mental virus has had no trouble spreading through all of our federal agencies. It's even in places you wouldn't expect, like our military, and already fully embedded in policy in corporate America. But CRT finally encountered something, and parents, particularly the South Lake School District, that it couldn't defeat. Parents. So let me back up for just a moment and tell you the story. See, when the Carroll ISD attempted to implement, that's the school board, attempted to implement critical race theory, parents responded instantly. Parents were not up in my town for tackling theoretical racism with a bigoted Marxist worldview that teaches actual racism to their kids. And the parents quickly organized a PAC called South Lake Families, and it took off. When these parents began showing up in greater numbers at school board meetings, there was a shock. The school board didn't see it coming. They were just going to implement a CRT plan presented in a 34-page cultural competence action plan. I've written about it before, called CCAP. And they tried to do it, even reportedly violating Texas's Open Meetings Act to circumvent parents to keep them out of the loop, before one family finally had enough and filed suit. It was a ridiculous plan and a blueprint for an fake anti-racist revolution, and how the district's schools conducted their businesses, and the school board's behavior in implementing was called into legal question. Now, the plan is insanely radical. It would have been over the top even at Cal Berkeley. So, for example, everything from curriculum to discipline policies to teacher training to hiring decisions, everything must be filtered through the prism of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are pleasant-sounding words that actually mean CRT. Race must be considered first. Part of the plan required a director of equity and inclusion, that position. They would be hired to oversee implementation of this program, including the goal to, quote, embed diversity and inclusion curriculum initiatives for students as an enrollment to graduation, a process in all grades, end quote. One of the things called for also was the creation of a secretive council to track students', quote, microaggressions, consciously or subconsciously done, end quote, and it would be attached to their permanent record. Kids would have to learn the anti-historical revisionist propaganda like the 1619 Project, which, by the way, was so bad it was debunked by even other communist college professors who were so embarrassed by the inaccuracies in 1619 Project that they were actually scared it was going to harm their cause. That's just the top of the iceberg of what CRT activists wanted to present as education in our district. And this is kind of par for the course everywhere else. It was nothing less than this plan to ingrain woke, social justice, racial politics in public schools and in my town, and in my district, Carroll ISD. The overwhelming sense from the plan is that it would have created a regime to hector students about everything and snitch on them for anything and then hold them accountable for everything, like your pronouns, using the pronoun you want to use and that science follows. That would be counted as one. But again, Southlake parents weren't having it. So they formed a PAC, Southlake Families PAC, and they fought back and they put forward new school board candidates. Long story short, the parents fearlessly stood their ground, and roundly. The first election, the first municipal election last year, it was like plus 30 victory. Just last month, Andrew Yeager won a school board seat, plus 60 was the victory. These are parents, Democrat and Republican, voting against this stuff. And a lot of this is led by minority families who are whitewashed out of existence by CRT proponents. No, they defeated these school board candidates that were pushing CRT. It was a huge victory against critical race theory, and it became, as I wrote in Newsweek, the red print for how to defeat Marxist ideology in every town across America. And so the Southlake School, Carroll ISD, became a real problem for the Marxist progressive left, because now school districts and parents everywhere, they're modeling their PACs and their outreach and activism on what happened in Southlake. Critical race theory is critical to Marxist plans to change America. And so Southlake provided for a model how to win this in municipal elections against this ideology. And so all across America, parents took notice. They began replicating the success, and it is working. You saw the massive pushback by parents in Loudoun County, Virginia, and the election of Republican Glenn Youngkin. Democrats were voting for him, and he ran on these very issues effectively. Parents are awake to critical race theory. School boards are on notice. That means the left has to make an example out of some folks, including Carroll ISD and the parents in Southlake. So the woke empire strikes back. And that's exactly what's happening with the help of legacy media, right? So first, NBC began last year this investigative series on my town. They sent their news trucks to film in our subdivisions. They recorded parents walking into school board meetings and into city halls to vote, our city hall to vote. It was really interesting that after Carroll ISD School Board, they got some bad press. They got in trouble because they violated the Texas Open Meetings Act, and that's a law violation. They hired pricey PR firm SunWest PR. At taxpayer expense, of course, even though the district has an in-house PR specialist. And coincidentally, right after SunWest PR got involved, very coincidentally, I'm sure, NBC got involved. NBC's goal is to portray Southlake, Texas as this highly racist, homophobic, and transphobic area, and that any parent, especially, by the way, the minority parents that have been actually leading the fight on this, that anybody who speaks out against CRT is a racist, or as one CRT advocate said to one of the Cuban families here, white adjacent, whatever that means. They also wanted to pretend that critical race theory was never going to be implemented in Southlake School District to begin with. The parents were just making it up because, as you know, that's what the Marxist left always does. They gaslight you. And it was no different in Carroll ISD. But now we are seeing how the progressive left plans on taking their revenge to the next level. They're weaponizing the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, their Civil Rights Division, to get in the way. Watch.
What we know so far is that the Office of Civil Rights, this is the civil rights investigation arm of the U.S. Department of Education, this is a federal probe, has opened these 3 investigations, and they're looking at allegations and complaints that deal with racial harassment and harassment around gender and sexuality. And of course, we have been reporting on incidents in this school over the last several months.
Yeah, they've been reporting for the last several months, but what's funny is that the NBC hasn't even been able to verify whether or not some of the people that they're using as their spokespeople essentially for CRT issues on this even live and pay tax in the district, which not all do. I know, journalism. Legacy media is doing the bidding of the Democrat Party and teachers unions. And they have their sights set on Southlake to make an example out of anyone who pushes back on CRT. How insanely rare is it for the Department of Education in the first place to take on complaints? But yet they're looking at new complaints of racism and harassment around gender and sexuality from a district in Texas. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, right? Watch.
We spoke to some experts who put this in context for us. Look, normally when these complaints come into this office, this federal office, only about 5 to 10% of them go from a complaint to a real investigation. And this one school system is looking at 3. So that is significant. And the school has now put out a statement to us, and they say that they are fully cooperating with this process and diligently pulling all documents requested. But, you know, it's important to know that this is going to be a process. Usually these take north of 14 months for the full process to play out. And then after that, if the government determines that there have been violations of Title IX in this school district, they are going to not only force the school district to make changes, but ultimately end up monitoring them potentially for years.
And by the way, that reporter is an absolute propagandist. I have video footage of her not wanting to talk to other families that don't represent what she wants to represent about CRT propaganda. NBC is a hackneyed propaganda outlet. They are not a news entity. Keep that in mind. And these people who have come to, they're not even from this area, they're not even from this town, come here and push hate and division. Now, here's what's weird. I mean, you have an election. Parents determine that they don't want this racism taught as education in their schools. And then so all of these activists decide they're going to circumvent that, and they're going to just bring in the government to put the boot of full government power right down on your free and your fair election. And parental sovereignty, too. The DOE rarely ever takes on complaints like this, but suddenly they're taking on 3 complaints. Again, coincidence? Of course not, because we know that Attorney General Merrick Garland's DOJ has instructed the FBI to keep files on uppity parents who speak up at school board meetings. And now the Department of Education is being weaponized. They want to overturn the will of parents in Southlake, Texas, and force critical race theory into public schools, like it or not. And if it takes weaponizing the DOE, Marxists will do it, because everybody needs to pay attention to this, because this is the playbook that is coming to every last school district in the United States that pushes back on critical race theory. They're going to come after parents by weaponizing the FBI, and then they're going to come after the districts and force it in there anyway by weaponizing the Department of Education, so they can force CRT and radical ideologies into the schools against the will of the people and against the parents, who, by the way, defeated all of that in an overwhelming electoral defeat. So, how are they doing this? They're taking undisclosed complaints of racism and bullying to the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, so they can initiate an investigation with the goal of enacting federal monitoring of the school district. So they're going to start a fire so they can call in the fire department. My own Congresswoman, Beth Van Dyne, can't even get an answer from DOE as to what exactly Carroll ISD's civil rights violations even are. They refuse to share that information. So the DOE, they just said, we are investigating. We don't even know what these accusations are, if they are even real. Welcome to the American Stasi, where you're being investigated for a crime, but you have no idea what for. All we know, well, we kind of know what it is. Parents stood up to critical race theory in Southlake, Texas, and they won not once, not twice, but 3 times overwhelmingly. And now they have to be punished by Marxists. And to be clear, if there was any kind of civil rights violation found, why is it not a state and local issue? Why is it immediately escalated to the federal level? And parents, I'm a taxpayer in this district. There are parents here with kids and pay taxes into this district, and they're not given any answers about this at all. No, this is from the same people who wanted to implement a program where students snitch on each other for every last microaggression and promote cancel culture, which is what happens when CRT is embraced. And now they're doing this. What they want, the CCAP thing, is not any answer to any problem, real or not. In any case, the Southlake Families PAC is pushing back and demanding information on this investigation by the Department of Education. So today, Southlake Families attorneys are submitting multiple Freedom of Information requests to the federal government. Parents want to know if any of us have been targeted and tagged by the Counterterrorism Division of the FBI. They want to know if there's been any communications from local citizens to the DOJ, as was threatened multiple times on social media. Also, attorneys for the PAC want to know if there's any link between the DOJ, FBI, and DOE with regards to 3 investigations of the Department of Education launched against CISD. The fact that these investigations come after extreme left-wing activists made direct threats to our city and schools immediately upon their loss in the November school board election necessitates further inquiry into potential political retaliation and abuse of power by our school board, by the district, citizens, and the Biden administration. So parents, get ready. I'm not trying to scare you, but I do want to be honest. Marxists never sleep. Their lidless eyes never blink. And as the Southlake School District is proving, Carroll ISD, after pushing back successfully against CRT, the woke empire is striking back. But we know how that series ends.